First-class teacher, creative person, friend of the children, the best counselor, a communist worker, a member of the CPSU, a deputy of the local city council, and simply a respected man in the city. Anatoly Slivko was very fond of pioneers and black shiny boots. Hello, this is Defunct City. Subscribe to our channel, and we go on. One day in the year 1961, he witnessed a terrible accident in which a very young pioneer boy died. It was then, at the sight of the bloodied body, dressed in black pants, a white shirt with a red tie, and shiny new boots, that Slivko first experienced the strongest excitement. Ever since, haunted by visions in which boy pioneers in uniform were writhing in agony, Slivko had been searching for a way to repeat that very sensation. And he found it. Anatoly, or Tolik, as the pioneers called him, Slivko was born on the 28th of December 1038 in the small Dagestan town of Izburbash. The settlement was founded in 1031, so there were no normal comfortable conditions for life there at that time. Slivko did not like to reminisce too much about his childhood, an unsettled life, his parents' frequent quarrels. In any case, this is the version he later told the investigators. Probably, Slivko wanted to create a certain image of a battered and shy teenager, whose childhood left a deep imprint on his later life. According to the recollections of Slivko's neighbors and acquaintances, the family was unremarkable. His mother and father were hard-working, quiet people, unlike any domestic tyrants. At the age of 15 or 16, Tolik realized that he was not attracted to girls. He tried to ask female classmates out a couple of times, but did it more because he had to or because his parents told him to. From Slivko's diaries, it is clear that puberty came quite late. So he recalled that he experienced his first orgasm at the age of 22, and so it was self-satisfaction. At the same time, he began to notice that girls caused him rather rejection, but boys, on the contrary, interest. In 1961 years, a girl sat on my lap and tried to excite me. After she left, I felt bad, I felt disgusted and vomited. He wrote. Slivko left for the army and went to the Far East. During those years he tried to maintain a relationship by correspondence, and at the end of his service he came to see a girl to propose to her. However, after spending a few days in her house, he realized that he felt no attraction and could not become a full-fledged husband. At the same time, in the year 1961, he witnessed the accident in which the teenager pioneer was killed. It was this situation that Slivko recounted at the interrogation. He was in a school uniform, with a tie, a white shirt, and new black shoes. There was a lot of blood. There was gasoline splattered all over the asphalt. I suddenly had a feeling, a desire to have a boy like that, to make him feel bad, to hurt him. That feeling haunted me all the time. Slivko decided that a change of scenery should rid him of his obsessive and frightening desires. He left the Far East and came back to his parents, who moved to the town of Nevonomysk, Stavropol territory. There Tolik got a job at a local factory, having previously graduated from a chemical engineering college. In addition to his main job, Slivko dreamed of working with children. In 1963 year he was hired as a pioneer counselor in secondary school number 15. Tolik's duties included organizing camping trips. But he soon realized that he did not want to depend on the will of the school administration and conceived the idea of opening his own travel club. By that time he had already acquired a couple dozen devoted pupils who were ready to follow him everywhere. He knew how to communicate with children, understood their psychology well. Besides, Slivko was very enthusiastic about his work. He told the children about flowers and trees, taught them how to treat nature with care, how to pitch tents and build fires. In general, everything that the pioneers who went on a camping trip should know. In 1966 year, Slivko finally managed to get the use of a small wooden building, where he opened a club called Romantic. The room was modest, and funding for equipment was practically zero. So everything was bought with small contributions from each of the participants. However, These circumstances only brought the children together. They felt like one big family, the leader of which was, of course, Slivko. He felt very comfortable in the company of the pupils. Unlike those situations when he had to communicate with his peers, the children listened to him, trusted him, and were truly loyal. But time was passing. Slivko was almost 30 years old, and he still was not married. In order to consolidate its position and to comfort his mother in 1967th year, he finally started a family. His wife Ludmila later recalled that before their marriage there was no intimacy between them, and then she put it down to his old-fashioned and good manners. However, little has changed since. Over 18 years of married life, as Slivko himself wrote, he slept with his wife barely more than 10 times. My wife was very worried. She visited the doctor, blamed herself. Then Anatoly himself decided to see a doctor. The specialist listened to him attentively and advised him to spend more time in the fresh air and rest. Surprisingly, the couple managed to have 2 children in this marriage. Tolik was not interested in his wife. He spent almost all his free time away from work at the plant at the club. The old building, however, burned down, and the boys were given a room in the chemist's palace of the cultural center of the city. New club, new name. They decided to take the name Cherjid, across the rivers of mountains and valleys. There were about 200 people in the club. They were all infinitely devoted to their counselor and leader. Slivko introduced a system of rewards and punishments to maintain discipline in an already considerable organization. So when the group went on a hike, each participant turned and lost points. For example, plus 10 points for bringing the most firewood or minus 10 points for bringing too little water. At the end of the trip, the points were added up and materialized into real money. Those who screwed up could either pay, which was a lot of money, or take part in one of Slivko's experiments. By that time, Tolik realized that the picture of a dead boy in a pioneer uniform did not go out of his head. In my fantasy world, which for me has become more real than reality, there are chase adventures and happy boys in black boots. I can do whatever I want with them. They love it, and they smile at me. Realizing that it would take sacrifices to fulfill such fantasies, I wondered how to get the boys unconscious. Slivko wrote, in one of the medical books he came across an article. When a person is hung for a short time, a partial loss of memory occurs, when all memories of the recent past are erased. If such a method really worked, it would allow a would-be maniac to enjoy the helpless state of the pioneers and the sight of their torment, the memories of which would be erased from memory. Anatoly, who was seriously interested in photography and video filming, invited the children to become actors in his films. The plot of these home movies was usually the same. The bad guys catch the good guys and then torture them for a long time. As Slivko later assured the investigation, all the guys agreed voluntarily. And judging by the stories of his former pupils, it is not hard to believe this. In addition, on occasion, he offered good money from 10 to 25 rubles for participation in the shooting. The first experiment was a success. He hung the boy by the neck, and after a while he lost consciousness. Watching the convulsions, Slivko committed an act of self-satisfaction. After the boy regained consciousness, he remembered nothing. The entire process was filmed on camera. A few months later, Slivko decided to repeat the experiment. But this time the victim died. 15-year-old Nikolai Dobryshev suffocated in a noose. The counselor tried to resuscitate him, did heart massage and artificial respiration, but in vain. It was necessary to get rid of the body. Slivko cut him into pieces and drowned him in the river. He destroyed the tape that captured the entire process. Despite the fact that one of his charges died, Slivko continued his experiments. He recorded each of them on camera and made careful notes in a notebook. How the strangulation affected, how the subject behaved, how long did the loss of consciousness last. He didn't hang some of the kids, but acted differently. He would put a cellophane bag over his head, or let him breathe ether, or tie the child's hands to trees. put a rope around his legs, and pull him toward himself, imitating the medieval torture of the rack. If the experiment ended in the death of the subject, Slivko would dismember the body and pour the blood into a tray, from where he would then scoop it up with a spoon and drink it. He would make figures out of the body parts. He could, for example, put his head to the shining, polished boots, for which he felt a special awe. He attached great importance to equipment. Before the procedure, he gave the boys a fine-tuned uniform and clean shoes. One day, he recalled, one of the teenagers turned out to be very untidy. His clothes and feet were dirty. Slivko did not conduct the experiment on him and sent him home. It is believed that at least 40 boys suffered from his experiments. Some of them were seriously injured and became practically disabled. 7 boys were deprived of life. The latest victim was the 13-year-old Sergei Pavlov. He told his mother he went fishing and went to see Slivko. On the way, Pavlov met a neighbor and blabbed about where he was going with a supervisor, who promised to film him for the magazine. When the boy did not return home, the relatives sounded the alarm. This was not the first time the teenager had disappeared. In the Nevin-no-Miss prosecutor assigned an assistant to handle the case. She drew attention to the fact that all the teenagers were members of the club. Cherjid. After questioning the other participants, she noted with surprise the filming of films in which the boys were suspended as a joke. However, the boys were reluctant to make contact and were not about to give up the leader. The first one who let it slip was a guy named Vyacheslav Kvostok. He said that Slivko strung him up in a noose, which made him lose consciousness. After Kvostok, several more guys testified. Despite the very evident evidence against Slivko, the prosecutor's office could hardly believe that everybody's respectable teacher, hard worker, and founder of the model show club could be mixed up in this case. However, a search warrant was nevertheless issued. On December 28, 1985, the police came to the club. In the secret room they found irrefutable evidence of Slivko's guilt. Pictures of dismembered bodies, knives, axes, ropes, and other implements. In addition, the films spoke for themselves. Slivko was arrested and placed in a detention center. During the investigation he confessed to 7 massacres. The court, which was held in June of 1986, sentenced him to the capital punishment. However, the lawyer applied for a re-examination, which was denied. This did buy him some time. In 1988, he was approached by investigator Issa Kostoev, who worked on the Andrei Chikatilo case. Kostoev hoped that the conversation with Slivko would help him better understand the psychology of the maniac. He also counted on the criminal's valuable recommendations. Slivko left a notebook, which he scribbled in its entirety. There were many confessions and about the terrible accident he had witnessed, his morbid fantasies, and his failed family life. Slivko waited several years for the sentence to be carried out. In 1989 he was shot in Novokirkivsk prison. See you on the Defunct City soon.